This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to compare two premium Windows 8 tablets in the 10 to 11 inch kind of space. We have the Sony VAIO Tab 11 here and the Microsoft Surface Pro 2 here. Both of these call it around $1,100 for the Core i5 model, so how do you choose? We're going to help you decide now. Alright, if you walk into your local Best Buy, for example, or retail, you're probably going to see both of these tablets. Well, right now for Sony, it's only Sony stores and Best Buy stores, for bricks and mortar stores, that are stocking the Sony VAIO Tab 11. The Surface Pro 2 is available in quite a few stores. Of course, online you can get both of these as well. Similar pricing if you're talking about the Core i5 model, both of which would have 4 gigs of RAM and 128 gig SSD and full HD displays. $1099 for the Sony, called $1,100, and while the Microsoft Surface Pro 2 is $999, you need the keyboard with it, don't you? So that's going to add on another $120 to $130. If you get the Type Cover 2, which is the one here with the movable clicky keys, $130. If you get the Touch Cover 2, then it's going to be $120. And this is the Touch Cover 2 for those of you who aren't familiar. Sort of capacitive touch experience here, no moving keys. Works pretty well, surprisingly, but if you actually spend a lot of time typing text, you're probably going to want the Type Cover 2, which would compete more directly with our Sony keyboard. First thing you're going to notice here, Sony's a little bit bigger, 11.6 inches versus 10.6 inches on our Surface Pro 2. Does an inch make a whole lot of difference? Probably not. If you got a Surface Pro 2 and you said, wow, that screen was too small for me, you probably want to get a 12.5 inch or a 13.3 inch to really notice a big difference. But still, that extra inch of screen real estate does make text a little bit bigger, a little bit more enjoyable if you're watching movies, just because, well, it's slightly bigger. Still, not a huge difference, obviously, in the screen size here. Both of these full HD displays, both using IPS technology. Sony uses their tri-luminous display, and this is one of the places where the Sony Tab 11 is going to pull ahead because that tri-luminous display has really wide color gamut, beautiful colors. Let's put these on the same desktop here with multicolored pencils so you can see. Now, both of these are quite nice. The Surface Pro 2 is no slouch. It has a pretty decent quality, say 50% of Adobe RGB, where we're talking 75% of Adobe RGB on the Sony VAIO Tab 11. That means that colors are a little bit more nuanced. If you look at the blue over here, you can see more shades of purple in it, whereas more of a straight blue over here. Again, they're both very pleasing displays, and average users will enjoy either of these, but graphics professionals will probably gravitate towards the display with higher color gamut. They're both pretty bright. Surface Pro 2 gets a bit brighter in terms of absolute nits of brightness. The Sony, there's more places you have to go to actually disable the ambient light sensing on it, but once you do, we got 299 nits for our maximum brightness level using our Spider 4 Pro colorimeter, and on Surface Pro 2 you're exceeding 300 nits of brightness, so a little bit brighter there. Both of them are glossy, both of them do have glare. When it comes to the keyboards, notice with the Sony, it does not attach physically. This is a wireless keyboard. It's not Bluetooth. It actually has a separate wireless receiver for this, probably 2.4 gigahertz, just like accessory keyboards that have little dongles on them. The nice part about that is you can pick this up and put it in your lap. The bad part about it is if you want to use it in your lap, the whole contraption, which you probably would want to do. This is a small display running at high resolution. It's not like you want to put it 3 feet away when you're working. Things are a little hard to see. Well, you can't do that, so you lose the stability of the typical clamshell kind of form factor that you would have if these latched together. The other thing is this does have a battery inside, and it charges. The way it charges is by acting as the cover, which is nice. Same idea here. This is a keyboard cover also. But you can't charge it unless you are not using it, therefore, because charging pin here on this part, charging pin on the device, only charges when you do that. Now, it's a nice looking aluminum cover over here. They have a thin layer of aluminum on the top, available in your choice of black or white. By the way, the Sony, the Surface Pro 2 is only available in what I would essentially call black, but that's what that looks like from the side right there. Surface Pro 2, you probably know about this by now. Magnetic cover attaches, wow, really, really strong. You can pick it up, you can carry it by this, it doesn't dislodge. With the Sony, it's easy to kind of slide it off accidentally when it's in place, which makes me worry about it grinding against the display when it's in a case. With this, you get the stability for using it in your lap. It's the kind of normal clamshell form factor. And if you want to get rid of it temporarily, you just fold it back. It knows when it's folded back and it disables itself, so that's handy. With the Sony, you got to pick up the keyboard, toss it somewhere if you don't want to use it. One complaint folks had about the Surface Pro original model was its one-position stand. This one has a two-position stand, so that wider angle is good if you're using it in your lap and you want to lean back further. Both of these have wide viewing angle IPS displays, so it's not like you really have to spend a lot of time tilting them to see them easily. So I find the two positions that are available pretty useful. If I want to use it on my lap, if I want to use it on a table or a desk, it works for me, but some people are absolutely deranged if they can't choose their exact favorite angle. Aha! So Sony said, look, we'll give you something with much more adjustment. This little 1-inch wide flappy thing right here comes out, and you can go all the way like that. So you have more level of variation. The bad news is that it's just a thin piece right here. It is pretty sturdy, but if you want to use this on your lap, obviously it's going to fall between your legs. It's also a little harder to open. It's pretty stiff. It does have a nice rubber tip, but you kind of have to turn it around and consciously look. Oops, see, the keyboard just slid off on me right there when I was trying to pick it up. So a little bit more fiddly. Now our Surface Pro 2 has a wide apron over here. Good for using on your legs. Very stable. Magnesium, metal, all over the place. Which leads to build quality. The Surface Pro 2 really is, it's supposed to be a showcase for the best of Windows 8 products. Its fit and finish is absolutely superb. Apple doesn't got anything on Microsoft when it comes to that. Perfect seams, perfect build quality, metal everywhere, Gorilla Glass on the face. It's just a sturdy, well-made, and in its own interesting modern way, attractive kind of product. It is 0.53 inches thick and 2 pounds. Now the Sony fights back with currently being in the size class the thinnest and lightest Windows 8 tablet. It's also Sony's first Windows 8 tablet. So it's a little bit thinner, 0.39 inches and 1.7 pounds. Now that thickness difference is noticeable. The difference between 1.7 and 2 pounds, we're talking ounces here. Not so much. Build quality, though, to get it that light and probably to keep the price down, you get plastic on the back here. Good old genuine plastic. So it doesn't have that kind of ritzy, super duper build quality. There's some flex over here, particularly the home button on this is very hard to click. I don't know why Sony did that. It's very stiff. And when you press it, you can actually push the plastic away from the frame a little bit. I'm not too thrilled with that. You can watch our full review to learn more about that. So it's not a terrible product, it just doesn't exude the same level of quality. At the same price, the Surface Pro 2 just seems like a more high quality piece. In terms of thickness, stacked, you can see how they look. Obviously, the Sony does cut the thinner profile. Now Sony fights back a little bit with their rear camera, 8 megapixel camera back here with Exmor RS sensor. It's actually a nice camera. It takes nice pictures. You have a 2 megapixel camera up front. On our Surface Pro 2, yes, we have cameras. No, they didn't do anything to make them any better than the original Surface Pro in terms of resolution. There's our camera on the back. You're talking 720p webcams back and forth. Now, I don't know how many of you use these big tablets to take pictures, but if that is something that is important to you, the Sony is going to win there easily. How about the pen story? Both of these are great for those of you who want to do digital note-taking. The Sony uses N-Trig technology, and again, read and watch our videos to learn more about these pen technologies. This has a quadruple A battery inside, not your usual double or triple A battery, but it lasts quite a long time, somewhere between 6 months and a year. Has buttons on the side, nice weighty metal thing. And there's really no good place to stick it. This is too thin for a silo, so Sony provides a plastic clip that unfortunately blocks the port door on the side. That plastic clip-on piece, it holds the pen really well, but because it blocks the port door, I'm not too fond of it. But it didn't lose the pen in my bag, and that's a good thing. Surface Pro 2 uses the magnetic charging connector to hold the pen. It's pretty effective. You can knock it off. If you carry it in the bag, it might come off. Drawback of this way of doing things is that if you have to charge it, you have to take the pen off. So don't lose your pen when you're charging it. This is a standard Wacom pen. Graphic artists will prefer Wacom because of WinTab pressure sensitivity. If you use Adobe Photoshop, Corel Painter, Paint Tool SAI, if you want pressure sensitivity, you're going to need WinTab driver. That's currently only available for Wacom. Now, when it comes to WinTab and Photoshop, Adobe is supposed to be working on something for N-Trig or for all other pens on the market, other kinds of technologies using Windows Ink API. So it should be coming not too much longer for the Sony and N-Trig, but it's not here today if that's important to you. Both of these have very good tracking and behavior. N-Trig's actually a little bit better with edge accuracy and pen location, where the pen tip touches, it actually shows exactly the right place on the screen. That's something that Wacom is not so good at. There's often more of an offset, and you have to spend more time calibrating. So it's a trade-off. For note-taking, honestly, they're both equally very good. Pen latency is good on these. You can draw concentric circles. You can write quickly. Not a problem. Now, there is a difference in performance between the machines, and they're both fast enough, honestly, to handle pen input very quickly, but let's talk about that a little bit. With our Sony VAIO Tap 11, Sony offers 3 different configurations, actually. There's the $799 base model that they priced and made, I think, just to steal people away from Surface Pro 2 and other lower-priced Windows 8 full-core tablets. That one runs on a 1.2 gigahertz Pentium CPU. Whenever you hear Pentium, you know, Pentium or Celeron, they're talking about yesteryear-style performance. Not real fast. It's about half as fast as Surface Pro 2. Next up is the Core i3, Haswell all the way on both of these, and that's 1.5 gigahertz, and then there's a Core i5. Now these are the Intel Y series CPUs used on here, 11.5 watts with a 6 watt running mode also, so lower power, used for tablets for reduced heat, and in theory better battery life, but in real life not so much. About 80% of the performance you'll see on the Surface Pro 2 Core i5, which is a U-Series Haswell CPU. The U-Series is what you see in all Ultrabooks. With the Surface Pro 2, you're getting all the power of today's Ultrabook just in a 10.6-inch model right here. So if performance is really important to you, the Surface Pro 2 is going to be a winner. Surface Pro 2 is also available with 8 gigs of RAM if you want, and you can get a bigger SSD. You can get a 256 or even a 512 gig SSD. With the Sony VAIO Tap 11, it's 4 gigs of RAM, that's it, and the 128 gig SSD option right now. RAM is soldered on board on both of these, so you're not going to be upgrading it. SATA drive on the Sony, in theory, it should be easier to upgrade now that Sony designs this to be taken apart. Surface Pro 2 is so hard to take apart, just don't even think about it. In terms of ports, well, you know, these kind of tablets are constrained for ports. Both of these have a USB 3.0 port. On the Sony, it's under these fiddly little plastic doors that drive me absolutely insane. And there's our USB 3.0 port. This thing will probably get in the way of bigger connectors. You'll probably rip it off at some point. And we have a micro HDMI connector right here. On this side, we have our 3.5 millimeter combo audio jack, volume controls, power button. Up here, we have a micro SDXC card slot, and there's a blank where a SIM card slot could go. The US version, there is no 3G or 4G option. Overseas, you may actually have that option. Surface Pro 2 also has a single USB 3.0 port. They don't bother color coding it because, well, it's the only port on there. You don't have to discern from one versus the other. Volume controls right here, audio jack right there. Magnetic charging connector there, and we have a mini display port. Now, mini display port's nice because it can drive higher resolution displays, bigger than 1920 by 1080, which is the Sony's limitation. When it comes to speakers, the Sony has stereo speakers right here on the back near the edge. There's one grill right there. There's one symmetrically opposed, and Surface kind of hides them in the little gap right here on each side. These are tablets. These are not big tablets. You're not going to get awesome, amazing bass on either of these or wildly great volume, but they're both loud enough to hear in a moderately noisy room. They're pretty adequate. Surface Pro 2, I'd say, has a slight bit more bass here, but we're not talking awesome on either of these. And we'll play a video so you can hear. And let me just get off topic for a minute. If you want to see the difference in brightness between the two of these are both set to maximum brightness with ambient light sensing turned off. So you can see that the Surface Pro 2 is the brighter tablet. But now let's check the speakers. %50 volume for both of these. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at another cool Windows 8.1 8-inch tablet. This is the This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at another cool Windows 8.1 quieter, thinner sounding on the Sony.
This is the Lenovo Mix 2
right? Mix with two eyes first off. Why? We don't know. Speaking of video playback, both of these can handle 1080p video playback, no problem. Even if you go with the lowly Pentium model on the Sony VAIO Tap 11, these are full Windows 8 64-bit PCs. They can run iTunes, Photoshop, all that kind of stuff. Neither of them is really a gaming PC, let me put it that way, but with this guy, say you get the Core i5, you get Intel HD 4200 graphics versus 4400 graphics on the Surface Pro 2. You can tell the number's bigger, it means it's faster. I do play things like Civ 5 and Left 4 Dead 2 on the Surface Pro 2, and they run actually just fine, even Civ going up to full HD resolution. The Sony VAIO Tap 11, not so much. I mean, you could play Civ on it, yeah, I would. Left 4 Dead at a lower resolution, but anything beyond that, not so much. Between these two, the Surface Pro 2 is certainly going to be the stronger gamer. Let's talk keyboards. You would think the Sony keyboard would be the absolute winner, and yes and no. It's bigger, obviously. 11.6 inches affords more room than it does for a 10.6 inch. So you can see the difference in the amount of keyboard space that you have right there. Definitely in the Sony's favor there. A nice island-style keyboard. I think we're all used to those chiclet-style keys right now. For something that's this thin, the key travel isn't bad at all. It's not too bad to type on. One thing that does surprise me, though, something that's this thin, you can see the flex right here, the trampolining, typical of a non-unibody metal laptop kind of thing. That's a little bit annoying. Given that it does have some metal over here, I wouldn't expect much flex, but if I put it down on an uneven surface like this, sometimes you can actually feel it and the trampolining becomes more severe. So oddly, I find that this one needs a more stable surface than the Surface keyboards do. But roomier, if you have big hands particularly, this is going to feel nicer. No backlighting on the keys. Trackpad, a weird pebbly kind of texture here that I'm not too fond of. No multi-touch gestures really on either of these to speak of. This is bigger than the Surface Pro 2 keyboard, trackpad area rather, but it's pretty flaky in the way it behaves. So you can actually disable it. The on-off switch here, the far right switch position is to disable the trackpad in case you really don't like it. Surface Pro 2, on the other hand, you have your choice. You don't get the keyboard in the box like you do with the Sony, so it's up to you to pick which one you want. If you do a lot of typing, you're probably going to go with the type cover too. Moving keys. About the same amount of key travel as the Sony. Obviously not a chiclet design. There's no room for the space between the keys here. So it's more cramped, yes, but it's actually a pretty good typing experience. And this is a backlit keyboard. No batteries here, by the way. You don't have to charge these things, and they just automatically backlight when you attach it to the surface. And it knows if you move your hand over the keyboard, it'll actually light it up for you in a dark environment. So a small keyboard, but really a very good keyboard. And it's pretty darn stiff, surprisingly, for something this thin. And even when having an uneven surface, it really doesn't make a difference. There's no trampolining going on here. For those of you who don't type as much, you just want screen protection and some way to input short emails, URLs, there is the touch cover too. This is touch only. These keys do not move. There actually is a little space between these keys. Works better than you might expect, much better than the first generation touch cover. Really not something for long form use, but not bad. Again, small trackpad area right here. It's a little hard to see, but there it is in that area right there. Smaller even than the Sony, but it does behave in a kind of predictable fashion, whereas the Sony can be a little bit jumpy. Again, even though it's thin, and obviously you could twist it if you want, put something underneath it, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't move around, so that's what I mean about the surprising part is that these are actually better on uneven surfaces. And touch cover 2 is also backlit, which is pretty darn cool. How about battery life? Again, Surface Pro 2 is going to pull ahead here. About 6 hours of battery life, the same mixed use test that we use on all of our tablets, which means doing email, web browsing, streaming a 45-minute episode on Netflix, playing music in the background, using MS Office, all that kind of stuff. 6 hours for Surface Pro 2, 4.5 to 5 hours with the Sony VAIO Tap 11. It's thinner, it's lighter. Guess what? That means there's not as much room for a battery, so it has a lower capacity battery. Both of these have fairly compact, I'd say about laptop-sized chargers, not giant ones. This is the one for the Surface Pro 2. Has a USB port so you can charge your smartphone, whatever it is, on there. Magnetic kind of connector over here. And the Sony comes with pretty much the same charger that the Pro series comes with, and the Duo 13. Again, notebook style charger. It uses Sony's new style connector that I don't really like very much. They just started using this on the Sony VAIO Flip series. It kind of bows out a little bit. It's supposed to be easy disconnect so you don't trip over it. I don't find that that's much the case, but it is hard to get in, but not a real big point there. Fairly compact, also has a USB charging port for your smartphone. So that's the Sony VAIO Tab 11 versus Microsoft Surface Pro 2. Arguably the first and the best in the space, the Surface Pro 2, but the Tab 11 does bring a few things, like it's so thin, it's so light, it has a bigger display with better colors. Still, as you can see, in terms of value, I think Surface Pro 2 is really going to be the leader here, but you decide for yourself. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to watch our video reviews of each of these products, read our written reviews, and hit that like button.